I've just finished playing MiSide, and the thing with this experience is that it can be interpreted as more than a cute game where you hang out with a cute anime girl, because while I think that you're perfectly entitled to take the story of MiSide at face value, there are genuinely deeper concerns which are hinted at while you play the game. Concerns about the male identity crisis, about performance and relationships, that of identity, and for the Christian, how does God fit into all of this? Spoilers, by the way, and if you haven't played the game yet, you don't have an excuse because it's like 20 Australian dollars, so go play it and you can come back. The first concern is something that I think a lot of us who have grown up in the West are incredibly familiar with. All of us have grown up in a society which so desperately desires the emasculation of men. Society wants men to stop being men. The key scene from the game that I'm drawing this from is this bit here where Mita talks about how the real world and the world of MiSide are actually not that different from each other. So the player wants to get back into the real world, he doesn't want to stay in the game, he's trying to escape. Then crazy Mita transports him back to the real world for a short while to prove a point. And for some odd reason, she is genuinely right. If the player does end up going back to the real world, his life is going to be confined within 4 walls regardless of if he's in the game or not. At least in the MiSide world, he's got way more rooms to hang about in and a cute girlfriend to boot. But in the real world, what else has he got to do other than wake up, eat, shower, go to school, work at home, sleep, repeat? Just to preface this, that I'm not a communist and I hate the ideology, but one of the rare gems that Karl Marx writes about is how the worker in modern society is what he calls alienated from the products of his labor. Now stay with me here on this quick history lesson because I promise you that it relates to MiSide. What Marx means by alienate is that before the Industrial Revolution, workers had a direct connection with what they were making, or with the service that they were providing. So let's apply this to the player and what Marx says, that without capitalism, the player does coding not just to survive, but it's because he loves coding, he loves being creative, and he actively wants to do this. However, this changes with modernization and industrialization. When you put that same player into the modern world where he has a boss that wants him to do the same thing over and over, and coding becomes meaningless to the player because he's just doing the work for various clients. The player is alienated from his work. It's really cool to see MiSide play with that idea because we see how a person without God operates. I think the reason why the capitalist system works is only with Christianity, because it is with that worldview that you attach an idea, that you say that my work is meaningful because I am doing it not only for myself or for my employer or for my client, I am doing this to glorify God. The Christian is able to attach meaning to their monotony, while the player here can't really do that by himself. Which brings me to male loneliness, which we observe as the very foundation of MiSide. Let's take a look at this sequence between Cappy and the player. What's sinister about this section is this bit where Cappy references that MiSide is actually an adult game, and she accidentally sticks this device out while cycling through her inventory, which again highlights this crisis of identity for men. In a society which constantly shames and seeks to put down men, it's certainly not surprising why some young men have simply given up finding a relationship with a real woman and have settled for a so-called relationship with a series of pixels. Now don't get me wrong, if you're playing a video game with cute anime girls just as a short escape from the real world for a bit, I don't think there's something wrong with taking a break from reality to enjoy something cute. The problem is when you start neglecting your duties in the real world, when you start developing this fake relationship with this anime girl rather than actually going out to a community in the real world and developing a relationship there. This is the reason why I really encourage a lot of you guys who aren't part of a church community to go join one. The Christian faith is one where we journey together with other people, where iron sharpens iron and we build each other up. I could have so easily fallen into the trap of the player where I would prefer to live in the digital world more than I could exist in the real world. I could have so easily become a recluse, living life alone and depending on cute anime girls as a vice. The player doesn't want the responsibility of actually living and staying accountable to another person, the worries of a real relationship. He desires this transactional relationship where he does the simplest things to make this girl happy and only checks in with this girl when he needs something to be done for him. A notion which is even made more sinister with the fact that this is meant to be an adult game. We're now going to talk about Mita because she actually reflects a tendency and mindset that we can really easily fall into if we aren't careful. I'm going to use this word performance and use this metaphor of a stage play because that's what we see in MiSide. Every place that we live our lives in, whether it's home, school, or or our workplace. These are different stages in our lives for which we perform. At home, we act around parents. At school, we act differently amongst friends. At work, we act according to our employer, and we see in MiSide that Mita performs for us. She really tries to perform for us in order for us to accept her. She shows us how caring she is. She shows us how good a cook she is. She shows us that she's fun to be around with and hang out with. This is performance at its finest, out of a deep desire from Mita for us to accept her, for us not to leave her alone. However, Mita's got it all wrong. I want to read that passage about love from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, because love has performance attached to it, but ultimately, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It always protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. I think there's such a temptation for us as young men playing this game that the whole appeal of MiSide is the fact that it's about this cute anime girl who wants to be with you. And it's so tempting because that's what we also really want. We all want this experience of hanging out with a girl who also likes us. But in the real world, God desires more for us. Our relationship with God is the same because God also doesn't desire our performance. God went to so much, he loved us so much that he sent his son to die for us. God was willing to suffer and die for you and for me, for such a display of love, to then come to God with performance and without wanting to develop a genuine relationship with him is completely missing the point. The last thing which MiSide highlights is how our identity ought not to be so tied to our relationships, or anything else for that matter. As Christians, it is a constant reminder for us that we are sons of God, we are co-heirs with Christ, we are followers of Christ. The Bible is pretty clear in repeating that our identity is in Christ and all other things are secondary. All other things around us are to be used in order to continue developing our relationship with God and to continue glorifying him. We see in MiSide that the player doesn't really have an identity, and that's actually the tragedy of the player. He knows that he wants to escape back into the real world, but other than that, what has he got going on for him other than waking up, school, eat, code, sleep, repeat? For Mita, it's the same. Now, she is kind of excused for being trapped in the digital world, but we see the consequences of someone placing their whole worth and identity in another human being. Her self-image is so fragile that this is the only thing that will make her happy, to feel validated by the touch of another person. It's tragic, it's cruel, but stepping back and looking at MiSide as a whole, it is certainly a brilliant experience. I loved meeting every single one of these characters, hanging out with each of these girls. Best girl, by the way, is Tsundere Mita, with also one of the best endings I've seen from a story in a while. Though scraping past the surface, MiSide is actually incredibly intricate, touching on issues concerning men, our picture of relationships, matters of identity, with each of these notions reflecting a world in need of God.